This was a special day, as I said, for a lot of Canadian soccer fans. People who have been committed to this sport, love this sport, wanted to see this team first time in 36 years on this stage, and it was special.
It was, and they were. It was special because they were so brave. They didn't look like they felt the weight of the moment, or maybe they felt the weight of the moment in the right kind of way, and they used it as fuel rather than as fear. And they came out and they gave us just 90 minutes of absolutely relentless, thrilling soccer. And like, yeah, it's a cruel game. The result didn't reflect what everybody in the world saw happening on the field. If you're an American fan of a certain age, you probably had some sort of flashbacks to that 2002 loss against Germany in the quarterfinals. It felt like that. It felt like that to me. But the good news for Canada is they have 2 more games to play. That eliminated the U.S. 20 years ago. Canada, if they bottle this level of quality, this level of intensity, this level of confidence that they had in this game, they're going to give Croatia and Morocco hell in the next 2, and hopefully giving them hell also includes scoring a goal or 2. They certainly looked good for it today, and I don't know. It was just thrilling. It was so great to see this team that ripped through CONCACAF go out there and yeah, like just zero fear at all. It was like I enjoyed every second of that game except for the Belgium goal.
If you were watching this tournament as a total neutral, or if you had your team and you were open to supporting someone else you hadn't supported come to this tournament, how can it not be Canada at this point?
Right.
I mean, for me, that's like the best honor you can give someone, that you inspired a fan base, you inspired a crowd to the point that they now want to latch onto you and they want good things for you. And I think that's what we saw. And coming out of the US game, I had noted that I thought it was the best performance we would see from a non-powerhouse, that the way they controlled those first 45 minutes was the best we would see from that tier of team, and Canada blew that out of the water. What they did over 90 minutes, everything you said, Doyle, was spot on. It was spectacular. It was impressive in so many soccer ways, and it was just inspiring to watch in a way that I don't know how you can't want what's best for this team moving forward.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of semantics to your point, Bobby, but I don't care because I agree overall that Canada were phenomenal. They were special. As Doyle said, they were brave. I've heard it from some people, including Patrice Bernier, former Canada captain, who was like, they should finish, but I'm proud. And I think that's the feeling that a lot of people have, is pride that the players who came from their backgrounds, came through their systems, similar teams, locations, clubs, whatever, stepped on the field with the best players. And let's talk about it, the history of the world, right? When you're talking about De Bruyne and when you're talking at times about Hazard and when you're talking about Courtois and many of these players, and didn't look like they belonged, dominated the game and made them play to their tempo, right? And did it, as Doyle said, for such a long amount of time in this game. And that's what, as a fan, I've asked for coming into this tournament. I said it after the USA game. Like, I wanted to feel that I could see the DNA of the best of this team at some moment. And I think most Canada fans that I've talked to have said the same, which was this was all they wanted, was to see their team not play scared, to go there, to try and show themselves, to set a stage for what Canadian soccer will be known for and hope to continue over the course of years. This is just the start for them. And so you had to start the right way, and you didn't want to have to go back and fix history over the next few years at the international level and say, oh no, that performance, that was because we weren't ready yet. That was different. This is a new team. And I think for Canada, they did all of that to perfection. And a lot of guys, and I think that's why none of them are free for lives, stepped up in big moments. And I think through and talking during the game with Susanna and Pa of covering Alistair Johnston in a college soccer game in St. John, covering Kyle Larin while Jason Kreis and Adrian Heath sit in the front row as well at Belson Stadium when he played for UConn to see who would be their first draft pick in the next year, talking to Kamal Miller on the sideline of a game that I covered for Orlando City in which he wasn't going to play. So he wasn't warming up because he wasn't a starter for Orlando City 2.5 years ago, to now see them step up and elevate their game, and for Miller to constantly be a thorn for Kevin De Bruyne. Like, yes, I just said that. Kamal Miller was constantly a thorn for Kevin De Bruyne in this game. De Bruyne saying after, for winning man of the match, I don't know why I got it. I didn't deserve it. I'm like, that's not a mistake from this performance. So that all of that is really special. And there's a lot that this team can do. And now I'm getting the text about 6 more points and we're through the group. And yeah, it's fun and funny, but it's also realistic.
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. Let's talk about some of the soccer components that they did well.
Mhm.
Because this wasn't just a team that went out and tried hard. This wasn't just a team that capitalized on a Belgian squad that looked like they didn't have interest in being there today and absolutely did not respect their opponent over those 90 minutes. So what was the part that you saw from this Canadian team from a soccer perspective that stood out?
I mean, for me, it was the fact that they didn't play the way they did in qualifying. I thought Canada was going to come out and every game of this World Cup, it was going to look like that game against the U.S. in Nashville 15 months ago, where they had 26% possession and they just absorbed and eventually hit in kind of semi-transition. Like that was a nice goal that they scored against the U.S. But like they didn't want the ball. They played against the ball throughout most of qualifying, especially against the U.S., Mexico, even Costa Rica. In this game, they wanted the ball. They came upfield. They pressed the hell out of that old and slow Belgian back line. They were like constantly getting pressure to the ball so that they couldn't play up or out up until the goal anyway. They swarmed the midfield, so they like Witsel and Tielemans had like they couldn't solve what Canada was doing because Canada were so vicious about closing down on the front foot. It was a complete reversal of who they were and what got them there. That's always a risk. And I thought that John Herdman took some risks in the second half and made some gambles that didn't quite pay off and might actually come back to bite them. But we'll talk about that later. But in this case, taking going all in on that, I think was the right idea, because if you go out as the protagonist from the first whistle, I think that probably like you just have to run the nerves right out of yourself, and you probably do it within 4 steps.
Yeah, love that.
And what I've been talking about with Canada fans, and we've talked about on our shows for 6 months, but more specifically the last month or so, was there are weaknesses in all of the teams in this group, right? The draw happened, and it was Belgium and Croatia, World Cup semifinalists, World Cup finalists, Giants. That's it. Morocco, good team. You need to get 3 points off Morocco. Can you? Whatever, good teams. But when you sit down and look at these teams, there are weaknesses in these squads. And Canada came out and said, we're going to go directly at your weakness and shake you. And then you have Belgian players, I think, trying to react and say, how do we help protect Vertonghen and Alderweireld? How do we help them build out? How do we stay closer to them? And you saw Kevin De Bruyne dropping in to try and get possession to make life easier for them. And you saw a player in Tielemans who they pushed really high to try and open up space, lost himself in the game. And I think that's one of the better box-to-box midfielders in the world. He comes out at halftime because he got lost and he kind of lost himself. That's what you forced Belgium to do. And I didn't know how Canada could do that and not be down 2-0 at the same time. And that's what happened today.
Belgium had no idea what was happening. It was wild to see. And here's a little trivia just for us, right? When you think back on Canada's last, we'll say 5 major games, right? Between Belgium, probably the US, Mexico, maybe on the road at Costa Rica in CONCACAF qualifying, how many times have they used the same defensive approach? How many times do they use the same shape, the same pressing patterns, the same concepts on how they're going to win the ball? Have they done it twice the same in any of those games? And then today in the World Cup qualifier, the first time they're in the tournament in 36 years, and they come out with a totally different set. I mean, have we seen them press in that, what is basically a 3-4-3 man-to-man, basically everywhere in the attacking half? I don't think they've done that before at all. So this also just goes to the notion, right? And we still hear it across the world. Yeah, American players, Canadian players, good athletes, competitive, like these players in the field, their ability to shift between different defensive ideas from game to game, from within a game, is just amazing. I don't know how to applaud that enough. And the way they defended, the surprise they gave to Belgium, totally threw off a Belgian group of players who have seen supposedly everything in their career.
And when you normally say something like that, it's because a team comes out and uses someone in a way that you wouldn't expect, right? You play a center back at fullback, you play a center mid at center back. And when you look at a lineup sheet and you prep for the team, you don't know, you're surprised that that's what you're going to see. What Canada has and what Herdman used to perfection today is a lot of players who play comfortably in multiple positions. And I can tell you for an hour before this game, I said, these are the 5 different ways this team could set up based off the 11, not who could be in the 11. I don't know if Alphonso Davies is a left wing back. I don't know if Richie Larea is a left wing back. I don't know if Junior Hoylett, who's playing right wing back week in and week out for Reading, is out there, or he's a 10, or he's a forward. Tajon the same. And that's one of the skills, the talents, the depth that Canada has. And we've seen John Herdman use it a couple times, but never to this extent of, I'm going to throw these 5 guys out there, and they will rotate, right? We saw that throughout the game, pieces rotating, covering for each other. I still slightly question not starting Sam Adekugbe, but I can understand the concept. And, Alphonso Davies, the best left back and left wing back in the world. So I get playing him there. But that's one of those things that Canada has, Bobby, where they can do that both from an idea point of view and from a personnel point of view. And it's worth it because you're not just changing for the sake of changing and hoping it throws the other team off. No one can prep for it. Like if Canada rolled the same starting 11 out against Croatia, there's no way Croatia knows until the ball kicks off exactly how it's going to line up.
Yeah. Do we have anything else to celebrate about Canada before I do challenge Belgium's approach next?
We do. Atiba Hutchinson made his World Cup debut at 39. It was the thing I said I was most excited about yesterday. It wasn't a perfect game from him, but he got to play on this stage, and he played in the 2007 Gold Cup for Canada, where they got robbed. Although, come on, what are you going to do about it?
He was offside.
Yeah, exactly. Where they got robbed. And he has been in and out of the national team since then, but he came back committed to this, got injured this year. There were so many reasons this would never happen. And to see it happen was special. I mentioned Alistair Johnson and Kamal Miller elevating their game to this level. That wasn't a known. That was special. Milan Borjan was an injury question mark this week. This is a guy who came from Serbia as a refugee and talked about what Canada means to him and why he has always insisted on playing for the national team. He got to lead the team out there today. All of that special. And while he missed the penalty kick, Alphonso Davies is a superstar, just as a human being. And I think it wasn't his perfect game. It wasn't his best game, but everyone leaves this game, not just in the US, not just in Canada, not just in North America, knowing who Alphonso Davies is. And that was the point of this World Cup. Now you can go do your Belgium stuff.
Okay.
Now you can talk about waffles and fries and stuff like that.
No, I love you doing that. And I thought it was really cool. As hard of a moment as that was for Alphonso Davies, I thought he was still excellent after the miss.
Yeah.
And, I always enjoy a player, rising to that moment after a disappointment like that. But I do want to question Belgium for a second, because this is a team that does have the talent to win this tournament. They're at the bottom with Netherlands of the 9 powerhouses. Matt, are we okay with that distinction? Agree on premises?
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Okay. But what I do want to say is what the way Canada pressed Belgium, the way they defended them, going with their 3 attackers straight on pressing Belgium's 3 center backs in the progression phase when Belgium is set possession, and then having the 2 center midfielders man mark Belgium's 2 center midfielders. What was that leaving open for Belgium? It was leaving 3v3 in the attacking half. That was a 3v3 that included Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard. So why Belgium doesn't recognize this, doesn't drop their center midfielders down to just allow Canada to put 7 players in the attacking half, and then you can take a 3v3. I don't even care who the defenders are, right? Kamal Miller and Alistair Johnson Vittoria were awesome in this game, but you could put Thiago Silva and Rudiger over there, and you still have to feel good about Kevin De Bruyne, Batshuayi, and Hazard in the 1v1 situations. And Belgium never took it. The one time they took it is when they scored, right? It was so obvious that there's an option to the second layer into the depth. And the fact that they played that ball once and it led to a goal was just dumbfounding for me. So credit to Canada for putting him in that spot. But at the same time, Belgium has to recognize that moment. And it was so open. And they hit it once and they scored.
Yeah, they hit it once, but they weren't given the opportunity to hit it a lot. And that's what to go back to what I was saying about, how brave Canada were about bringing their lineup. Like, you can't bring your lineup if your front 3, but really like your entire midfield as well, aren't smothering any opportunity to play out like that with any sort of accuracy. And like for the first 35 minutes, every single time a Belgian got on the ball, they had a Canadian just closing them down like as fast as they possibly could. So they didn't have a chance to pick their head up. And then that one time leading to the goal, I think it was Jonathan David was like he just didn't check. He didn't check his shoulder. And so when the pass came out, I don't remember who had the assist, but was it Alderweireld?
I think so.
Yeah, when the pass came out, like it was in David's blind spot, and he was just 3 steps slow to close down, head up, ball into the channels, expose Vittoria for speed, and that is that. But like you're right, Bobby. Like that's always on, and that's what the U.S. In the first half against Wales, like Bale and James weren't closing down Zimmerman, Ream, or Dest because Dest was making it a back three. So they were able to play into the channels against Weah. Well, in the second half, Wales took that away. And so the U.S. said, okay, well, we'll hit on the counter a little bit more. With this game, Canada from the first minute was like, we're going to take away that ball over the top. We're going to be on the front foot. We're going to press. We are not going to give them a chance to hit that ball. They got that chance once through the whole 90 minutes. And yeah, that was the goal.
And talk me through the last end part of that is Vittoria's high. Kamal Miller recognizes the danger and steps back. Is Vittoria supposed to drop when he sees that Jonathan David didn't close, or is it just a mistake overall and there's nothing you can do about it?
I mean, this is one of the things you work on in training, right? Is this a moment when we drop when the head is up and we make sure we track the runner? Is this a moment we hold our line? This is one of those scenarios where I don't think either Miller or Vittoria messed up. I mean, they weren't exactly on the same page, but again, we are talking about two elite players for Belgium who just out executed them in that moment. And my argument here is that if they had tried that even under pressure, if they had hit blind balls into in front of the Canadian backline or behind them, there would have been more opportunities like this just because it was so open. So again, I wouldn't blame the Canadian defenders here as much as, well done by Belgium. You took what was there.
We have to give credit for some emergency defending as well on Canada's side. Kamal Miller winning a tackle in open field when it was 2v3, I think, against him. And then Richie Larea, which MLS Gone Wild just brought up, and definitely have to touch on his sliding tackle coming across the entire field when Batshuayi has pretty much a tap in for him to make it 2-0. And that's where you had that combination of effort, commitment, and ability for Canada
and celebration because Richie got up after that and he flexed. He 100%. He flexed like he threw it down from the foul line. Man, that was awesome.
And tip of the cap to Richie Larea, because this guy loves a yellow card and did not get one in a World Cup where people are handing them out like candy. And he has been fiery his whole career. And anytime he gets a chance, he normally starts a fight and picks up a yellow just for fun, just for good measure. Didn't pick up one here today. We saw Kyle Larin come off the bench in the second half and be pretty dangerous. Ismail Kone got into this game. This guy hadn't been in a professional team 2 years ago.
What a story. Absolutely incredible.
And he's now in the World Cup. And Doyle, he's the young phenom that a lot of people think will break out from this. And you saw him already sort of like feel comfortable at this level.
Yeah, he didn't look overawed or out of his depth at all coming out of the field. And I think he came on for Atiba, right? It was literally twice his age.
Yeah, right.
And that's great. And that's a sign of a good culture within the team. It's a sign of a good culture within player development. I do think to spin it ahead to next game for them, because they'll play Croatia. I do think they'll play against the ball a little bit more against Croatia. I think you got to drop that line and invite them upfield. I think that's fine. What we saw from this Canadian team, I'll compare them to Japan, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Japan, they played really low again and compact against Germany, and that led them to get passive. And that's a danger. Anytime you're playing against the ball in a low block, you could become too passive. And for an hour, that was a story for Japan. Canada did that throughout qualifying. They were low block playing against the ball. They never got passive. And I think that is the version of Canada that we need to see against Croatia. And the one obvious change to the starting lineup that we need to see is Kyle Larin back in there from the jump, because I just think Jonathan David plays better playing off of a target man in this type of setup. And this is a point I made on the postgame show. For a team like Arsenal, right? Jonathan David's a center forward. He makes sense in that role for a team like Arsenal that's going to have a ton of the ball. For a team like Canada that I think needs to go into the next game playing, okay, 35-40%, that's about where we want to top it out. He plays better off of someone. So I think going to a 5-3-2 instead of the sort of the 5-4-1 that they played today, that's the change that I want to see. The lowered line of confrontation, but keep the level up, keep the intensity up. And the greatest compliment I can pay this Canadian team is I have no doubt that they will. I have no doubt that they will keep their emotional level up. I do worry about them physically because they had to empty the tanks just in terms of closing the Belgians down all over the field. So maybe they won't have enough gas and that can come back to bite them. But it's after a day like today and seeing them play like that, it's hard not to be super optimistic about this entire program.
And you also have to now talk about John Herdman, right? And his ability to get his team mentally and emotionally where they have to be for every big game, not just for the men's side, for the women's side as well. And I don't think he's tactically perfect. And I think you've seen mistakes from him. But if you go back to yesterday's conversation around Herve Renard and you talk about the international game and how little time you have with your team and what you're trying to build, and for Canada on the men's side, restarting a culture and amidst a lot of chaos off the field and having your best player and your legend say, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, and trying to convince them to come back. He's done as perfect as you could expect. And he hit it once again. And so that's where I think, Joel, I agree with you. The compliment, it's to the players and to him and his staff, right? Like, whether it's a sword or a metal straw or I don't know, a video, whatever it's going to be, he's going to push those buttons to have this team ready to go against Croatia and have belief in themselves. And that's what he's done over the course of qualifying. That's what he's done over the course of the last few years. And it all came to, and I think you see on a day in which you see all the little flaws over the last 6 years, top down from Costa Rica, come out in one game against an elite opponent that doesn't make mistakes and let you, get away with things. Canada had the opposite, which was they didn't cram and try and get ready for this World Cup. They've been building this for a long time. And you saw the roots of that when they were under stress and under pressure in big moments in this one.